The Exorcist debuted back in 1973, and for the past 50 years, it has captivated audiences. And with that said, I have never seen this movie before the other night, so I was really curious, is it still worth watching here in 2023 and going into the future? So spoilers are ahead for a 50-year-old movie. If you don't want The Exorcist spoiled, click off now. Furthermore, in this video, I will be discussing kind of just my overall thoughts on if The Exorcist is still worth watching here in the modern day. So I'm just going to kind of hit the broad strokes of the movie and if it's still worth watching. So right off the bat, I do think the first 45 minutes to an hour of the movie could probably get cut away. I don't really know exactly what the writer director is going for here because again, the first 45 minutes to an hour feels like a very experimental, high concept student film that you would see in a film class in college. That's the best way I can describe it. There's no real need to have the scenes of like the priest in Iraq and all this background for a few of the other characters. You could have simply showed the younger priest kind of struggling with his faith. They could have just showed the mom and little girl having like a normal day for them, and then cut to the next day. All of a sudden, the little girl's not so normal after all. And then there you go. That's the movie. You pick up from there. We don't need kind of all this background and context that loosely, and I mean loosely, ties into the greater picture, but you really don't need it. It's just kind of unnecessary. And one of the things I noticed pretty much right out the bat is that there is hardly any musical score throughout the entire movie. There's only 3 scenes that I noticed that there's actually a musical score, and it's very brief and pretty subtle. I just thought that was pretty interesting for a horror movie or a horror genre movie, even going back 50 years ago, that they didn't have like a main theme that they kind of played throughout the whole movie or like main music that they kind of lean into, right? Other than like, I believe 3 times that I heard throughout the whole movie. And again, this does predate a lot of the horror movies that we know and love today, where a lot of the horror movies have very iconic themes like, of course, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and the list goes on. But either way, just from a filmmaking decision, I find that very interesting. And just from my observations, I would definitely say this movie is very early 1970s, which is honestly awesome. I really like that era, and I think it's super cool. I feel like they're able to display that era quite well. Obviously, it was filmed in 1973, so that's why they're able to do that so well. There's a ton of smoking, like every scene someone's smoking practically. And overall, just a lot of just 70s styles between the clothes, the cars, the buildings, the hospitals, and the list goes on. One of the scenes that really kind of cracked me up was when one of the doctors comes out of the hallway to come talk to the mom. And of course, he pulls out a cigarette and starts smoking. Also at the same time, they're both standing on orange shag carpet within a hospital. I mean, who thinks of that stuff? But hey, back in the late 60s, early 70s, that was the thing. Even coming from it from a modern lens, the practical effects I still think hold up awesomely. I gotta give it to them. This movie holds up so well when it comes to that part of the movie. The contacts, the facial makeup, even when she floats in the air, the little girl when she floats, like the practical effects are awesome in this movie, without a doubt. It is really great, still holds up fantastically, and that is definitely, I think, the highlight of the movie for sure, is the last 20 minutes of the movie where they really display all the great practical effects. And without a doubt too, this movie is very vulgar, even for a modern audience. There was a couple scenes that I was like, wow, I get why this movie was so controversial 50 years ago. I would even argue that it'd be controversial today. And ultimately, I think the movie is really good. It's just a very slow burn for, I would say, a modern audience, because again, the first 45 minutes to an hour, it really doesn't need to exist. I know it gives, I guess, greater context to what's being shown on screen and how it's going to connect to the later part of the movie, but still at the same time, you really don't need it. You could have just kind of jumped into the story and it would have been all the same in my opinion. But regardless, this movie is a horror movie classic. It definitely holds up here in the modern day. I would recommend it to anyone who likes horror movies. It's definitely worth watching. And if you haven't watched it and you're a horror movie fan, definitely put it on your list this Halloween season. You will not be disappointed. So with all that said, what are your thoughts on The Exorcist 1973? Let me know down in the comment section below. And while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.